a dialogue with Ezra about the end of the wisdom of the old age. Author, Othniel Max Daves. Babylon compared with Zion. Then I said in my heart, are the deeds of those who inhabit Babylon any better? Is that why it has gained dominion over Zion? For when I came here I saw ungodly deeds without number, and my soul has seen many sinners during these 30 years. And my heart failed me because I have seen how you endure those who sin, and have spared those who act wickedly, and have destroyed your people, and have protected your enemies, and have not shown to anyone how your way may be comprehended. Are the deeds of Babylon better than those of Zion? Or has another nation known you besides Israel? Or what tribes have so believed the covenants as these tribes of Jacob? Yet their reward has not appeared, and their labor has borne no fruit. For I have traveled widely among the nations, and have seen that they abound in wealth, though they are unmindful of your commandments. Now therefore weigh in a balance our iniquities and those of the inhabitants of the world, and it will be found which way the arrow of the scale tips. When have the inhabitants of the earth not sinned in your sight? Or what nation has kept your commandments so well? You may indeed find individuals who have kept your commandments, but nations you will not find. Limitations of the human mind. Then the angel that had been sent to me, whose name was Uriel, answered and said to me, your understanding has utterly failed regarding this world. And do you think you can comprehend the way of the Most High? Then I said, yes, my Lord. And he replied to me, I have been sent to show you 3 ways and to put before you 3 problems. If you can solve one of them for me, then I will show you the way you desire to see, and will teach you why the heart is evil. I said, speak, my Lord. And he said to me, go, weigh for me the weight of fire, or measure for me a blast of wind, or call back for me the day that is past. I answered and said, who of those that have been born can do that you should ask me about such things? And he said to me, if I had asked you, how many dwellings are in the heart of the sea? Or how many streams are at the source of the deep? Or how many streams are above the firmament? Or which are the exits of Hades? Or which are the entrances of paradise? Perhaps you would have said to me, I never went down into the deep, nor as yet into Hades, neither did I ever ascend into heaven. But now I have asked you only about fire and wind and the day, things that you have experienced, and from which you cannot be separated, and you have given me no answer about them. He said to me, you cannot understand the things with which you have grown up. How, then, can your mind comprehend the way of the Most High? And how? Can one who is already worn out by the corrupt world understand incorruption? When I heard this, I fell on my face and said to him, it would have been better for us not to be here than to come here and live in ungodliness, and to suffer and not understand why. Parable of the forest and the sea. He answered me and said, I went into a forest of trees of the plain, and they made a plan and said, come, let us go and make war against the sea, so that it may recede before us, and so that we may make for ourselves more forests. In like manner the waves of the sea also made a plan and said, come, let us go up and subdue the forest of the plain, so that there also we may gain more territory for ourselves. But the plan of the forest was in vain, for the fire came and consumed it. Likewise also the plan of the waves of the sea was in vain, for the sand stood firm and blocked it. If now you were a judge between them, which would you undertake to justify, and which to condemn? I answered and said, each made a foolish plan, for the land has been assigned to the forest, and the locale of the sea, a place to carry its waves. He answered me and said, you have judged rightly, but why have you not judged so in your own case? For as the land has been assigned to the forest and the sea to its waves, so also those who inhabit the earth can understand only what is on the earth. And he who is above the heavens can understand what is above the height of the heavens. The new age will make all things clear. Then I answered and said, I implore you, my Lord, why have I been endowed with the power of understanding? For I did not wish to inquire about the ways above, but about those things that we daily experience. Why Israel has been given over to the nations in disgrace, why the people whom you loved has been given over to godless tribes, and the law of our ancestors has been brought to destruction, and the written covenants no longer exist. We pass from the world like locusts, and our life is like a mist, and we are not worthy to obtain mercy. But what will he do for his name that is invoked over us? It is about these things that I have asked. He answered me and said, If you are alive, you will see, and if you live long, you will often marvel, because the age is hurrying swiftly to its end. It will not be able to bring the things that have been promised to the righteous in their appointed times, because this age is full of sadness and infirmities. For the evil about which you ask me has been sown, but the harvest of it has not yet come. If therefore that which has been sown is not reaped, and if the place where the evil has been sown does not pass away, the field where the good has been sown will not come. For a grain of evil seed was sown in Adam's heart from the beginning, and how much ungodliness it has produced until now, and will produce until the time of threshing comes. Consider now for yourself how much fruit of ungodliness a grain of evil seed has produced. When heads of grain without number are sown, how great a threshing floor they will fill. When will the new age come? Then I answered and said, How long? When will these things be? Why are our years few and evil? He answered me and said, Do not be in a greater hurry than the Most High. You, indeed, are in a hurry for yourself, but the Highest is in a hurry on behalf of many. Did not the souls of the righteous in their chambers ask about these matters, saying, How long are we to remain here? And when will the harvest of our reward come? And the archangel Jeremiel answered and said, When the number of those like yourselves is completed, for he has weighed the age in the balance, and measured the times by measure, and numbered the times by number, and he will not move or arouse them until that measure is fulfilled. Then I answered and said, But, O sovereign Lord, all of us also are full of ungodliness. It is perhaps on account of us that the time of threshing is delayed for the righteous, on account of the sins of those who inhabit the earth. He answered me and said, Go and ask a pregnant woman whether, when her 9 months have been completed, her womb can keep the fetus within her any longer. And I said, No, Lord, it cannot. He said to me, In Hades the chambers of the souls are like the womb. For just as a woman who is in labor makes haste to escape the pangs of birth, so also do these places hasten to give back those things who were committed to them from the beginning. Then the things that you desire to see will be disclosed to you. How much time remains? I answered and said, If I have found favor in your sight, and if it is possible, and if I am worthy, show me this also, whether more time is to come than has passed, or whether for us the greater part has gone by. For I know. And he said to me, Stand at my right side, and I will show you the interpretation of a parable. So I stood and looked, and a flaming furnace passed by before me. And when the flame had gone by, I looked, and the smoke remained. And after this, a cloud full of water passed before me and poured down a heavy and violent rain. And when the violent rainstorm had passed, drops still remained in it. He said to me, Consider it for yourself, for just as the rain is more than the drops and the fire is greater than the smoke, so the quantity that passed was far greater, but drops and smoke remained. Then I prayed and said, Do you think that I shall live until those days, or who will be alive in those days? He answered me and said, Concerning the signs about which you ask me, I can tell you in part, but I was not sent to tell you concerning your life, for I do not know. Signs of the end. Now concerning the signs, behold, the days are coming when those who inhabit the earth shall be seized with great terror, and the way of truth shall be hidden, and the land shall be barren of faith. Unrighteousness shall be increased beyond what you yourself see, and beyond what you heard of formerly. And the land that you now see ruling shall be a trackless waste, and people shall see it desolate. But if the Most High grants that you live, you shall see it thrown into confusion after the third period, and the sun shall suddenly begin to shine at night, and the moon during the day. Blood shall drip from wood, and the stone shall utter its voice. The peoples shall be troubled, and the skies shall be changed. And one shall reign whom those who inhabit the earth do not expect, and the birds shall fly away together, and the sea of Sodom shall cast up fish. And one whom the many do not know shall make his voice heard by night, and all shall hear his voice. There shall be chaos also in many places. Fire shall often break out. The wild animals shall roam beyond their haunts, and menstruous women shall bring forth monsters. Salt waters shall be found in the sweet, And all friends shall conquer one another. Then shall reason hide itself, and wisdom shall withdraw into its chamber, and it shall be sought by many but shall not be found. And unrighteousness and unrestraint shall increase on earth. One country shall ask its neighbor, has righteousness or anyone who does right pass through you? And it will answer, no. At that time people shall hope but not obtain. They shall labor, but their way shall not prosper. These are the signs that I am permitted to tell you. And if you pray again, and weep as you do now, and fast for 7 days, you shall hear yet greater things than these. Conclusion of the vision. Then I woke up, and my body shuddered violently, and my soul was so troubled that it fainted. But the angel who had come and talked with me held me, and strengthened me, and set me on my feet. Now on the second night Phaltiel, a chief of the people, came to me and said, Where have you been? And why is your face sad? Or do you not know that Israel has been entrusted to you in the land of their exile? Rise therefore and eat some bread, and do not forsake us like a shepherd who leaves the flock in the power of savage wolves. Then I said to him, Go away from me, and do not come near me for 7 days. Then you may come to me. He heard what I said and left me. So I fasted 7 days, mourning and weeping, as the angel Uriel had commanded me. Ezra's second prayer of complaint. After 7 days, the thoughts of my heart were very grievous to me again. Then my soul recovered the spirit of understanding, and I began once more to speak words in the presence of the Most High. I said, O sovereign Lord, from every forest of the earth, and from all its trees you have chosen one vine, and from all the lands of the world you have chosen for yourself one region, and from all the flowers of the world you have chosen for yourself one lily, and from all the depths of the sea you have filled for yourself one river, and from all the cities that have been built you have consecrated Zion for yourself, and from all the birds that have been created you have named for yourself one dove, and from all the flocks that have been made you have provided for yourself one sheep, and from all the multitude of peoples you have gotten for yourself one people, and to this people, whom you have loved, you have given the law that is approved by all. And now, O Lord, why have you handed the one over to the many, and dishonored the one root beyond the others, and scattered your only one among the many? And those who opposed your promises have trampled on those who believed your covenants. If you really hate your people, they should be punished at your own hands. Response to Ezra's complaints. When I had spoken these words, the angel who had come to me on a previous night was sent to me. He said to me, Listen to me, and I will instruct you. Pay attention to me, and I will tell you more. Then I said, Speak, my Lord. And he said to me, Are you greatly disturbed in mind over Israel, or do you love him more than his Maker does? I said, No, my Lord. But because of my grief I have spoken. For every hour I suffer agonies of heart, while I strive to understand the way of the Most High, and to search out some part of his judgment. He said to me, You cannot. And I said, Why not, my Lord? Why, then, was I born? Or why did not my mother's womb become my grave? So that I would not see the travail of Jacob and the exhaustion of the people of Israel. He said to me, Count up for me those who have not yet come, and gather for me the scattered raindrops, and make the withered flowers bloom again for me. Open for me the closed chambers, and bring out for me the winds shut up in them, or show me the picture of a voice. And then I will explain to you the travail that you ask to see. I said, O sovereign Lord, who is able to know these things except him whose dwelling is not with mortals? As for me, I am without wisdom, and how can I speak concerning the things that you have asked me? He said to me, Just as you cannot do one of the things that were mentioned, so you cannot discover my judgment or the goal of the love that I have promised to my people. Why successive generations have been created. I said, Yet, O Lord, you have charge of those who are alive at the end. But what will those do who lived before me, or we ourselves, or those who come after us? He said to me, I shall liken my judgment to a circle. Just as for those who are last there is no slowness, so for those who are first there is no haste. Then I answered and said, Could you not have created at one time those who have been and those who are, and those who will be, so that you might show your judgment the sooner? He replied to me and said, The creation cannot move faster than the Creator, nor can the world hold at one time those who have been created in it. I said, "How have you said to your servant that you will certainly give life at one time to your creation? If therefore all creatures will live at one time, and the creation will sustain them, it might even now be able to support all of them present at one time." He said to me, "Ask a woman's womb, and say to it, if you bear 10 children, why one after another? Request it therefore to produce 10 at one time." I said, "Of course it cannot, but only each in its own time." He said to me, "Even so I have given the womb of the earth to those who from time to time are sown in it. For as an infant does not bring forth, and a woman who has become old does not bring forth any longer, so I have made the same rule for the world that I created. When and how will the end come?" Then I inquired and said, "Since you have now given me the opportunity, let me speak before you. Is our mother, of whom you have told me, still young, or is she now approaching old age?" He replied to me, "Ask a woman who bears children, and she will tell you. Say to her, why are those whom you have borne recently not like those whom you bore before, but smaller in stature? And she herself will answer you. Those born in the strength of youth are different from those born during the time of old age, when the womb is failing. Therefore you also should consider that you and your contemporaries are smaller in stature than those who were before you, and those who come after you will be smaller than you, as born of a creation that already is aging and passing the strength of youth." I said, "I implore you, O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, show your servant through whom you will visit your creation." He said to me, "At the beginning of the circle of the earth, before the portals of the world were in place, and before the assembled winds blew, and before the rumblings of thunder sounded, and before the flashes of lightning shone, and before the foundations of paradise were laid, and before the beautiful flowers were seen, and before the powers of movements were established, and before the innumerable hosts of angels were gathered together, and before the heights of the air were lifted up, and before the measures of the firmaments were named, and before the footstool of Zion was established, and before the present years were reckoned, and before the imaginations of those who now sin were estranged, and before those who stored up treasures of faith were sealed. Then I planned these things, and they were made through me alone and not through another, just as the end shall come through me alone and not through another." The dividing of the times. I answered and said, "What will be the dividing of the times? Or when will be the end of the first age and the beginning of the age that follows?" He said to me, "From Abraham to Isaac, because from him were born Jacob and Esau. For Jacob's hand held Esau's heel from the beginning. Now Esau is the end of this age, and Jacob is the beginning of the age that follows. The beginning of a person is the hand, and the end of a person is the heel. Seek for nothing else, Ezra, between the heel and the hand." Ezra, more signs of the end. I answered and said, "O sovereign Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, show your servant the last of your signs of which you showed me a part on a previous night." He answered and said to me, "Rise to your feet, and you will hear a full, resounding voice. And if the place where you are standing is greatly shaken while the voice is speaking, do not be terrified, because the word concerns the end, and the foundations of the earth will understand that the speech concerns them. They will tremble and be shaken, for they know that their end must be changed." When I heard this, I got to my feet and listened. A voice was speaking, and its sound was like the sound of mighty waters. It said, "The days are coming when I draw near to visit the inhabitants of the earth, and when I require from the doers of iniquity the penalty of their iniquity, and when the humiliation of Zion is complete, when the seal is placed upon the age that is about to pass away, then I will show these signs. The book shall be opened before the face of the firmament, and all shall see my judgment together. Children a year old shall speak with their voices, and pregnant women shall give birth to premature children at 3 and 4 months, and these shall live and leap about. Sown places shall suddenly appear unsown, and full storehouses shall suddenly be found to be empty. The trumpet shall sound aloud, and when all hear it, they shall suddenly be terrified. At that time friends shall make war on friends like enemies. The earth and those who inhabit it shall be terrified, and the springs of the fountains shall stand still, so that for 3 hours they shall not flow. It shall be that whoever remains after all that I have foretold to you shall be saved, and shall see my salvation, and the end of my world. And they shall see those who were taken up, who from their birth have not tasted death, and the heart of the earth's inhabitants shall be changed and converted to a different spirit. For evil shall be blotted out, and deceit shall be quenched. Faithfulness shall flourish, and corruption shall be overcome, and the truth, which has been so long without fruit, shall be revealed. Conclusion of the second vision. While he spoke to me, little by little the place where I was standing began to rock to and fro. And he said to me, I have come to show you these things this night. If therefore you will pray again and fast again for 7 days, I will again declare to you greater things than these. Because your voice has surely been heard by the Most High, for the Mighty One has seen your uprightness, and has also observed the purity that you have maintained from your youth. Therefore he sent me to show you all these things, and to say to you, Believe, and do not be afraid. Do not be quick to think vain thoughts concerning the former times. Then you will not act hastily in the last times. The third vision. Now after this, I wept again, and fasted 7 days in the same way as before, in order to complete the 3 weeks that had been prescribed for me. Then on the 8th night, my heart was troubled within me again, and I began to speak in the presence of the Most High. My spirit was greatly aroused, and my soul was in distress. God's work in creation. I said, O Lord, you spoke at the beginning of creation and said on the first day, Let heaven and earth be made, and your word accomplished the work. Then the Spirit was blowing, and darkness and silence embraced everything. The sound of human voices was not yet there. Then you commanded a ray of light to be brought out from your storehouses, so that your works could be seen. Again, on the second day, you created the spirit of the firmament, and commanded it to divide and separate the waters, so that one part might move upward, and the other part remain beneath. On the third day, you commanded the waters to be gathered together in a 7th part of the earth. 6 parts you dried up and kept, so that some of them might be planted and cultivated and be of service before you. For your word went forth, and at once the work was done. Immediately fruit came forth in endless abundance and of varied appeal to the taste, and flowers of inimitable color, and odors of inexpressible fragrance. These were made on the 3rd day. On the 4th day, you commanded the brightness of the sun, the light of the moon, and the arrangement of the stars to come into being. 46. And you commanded them to serve the human who was about to be formed. On the 5th day, you commanded the 7th part, where the water had been gathered together, to bring forth living creatures, birds, and fishes, and so it was done. 48. The dumb and lifeless water produced living creatures, as it was commanded, so that therefore the nations might declare your wondrous works. Then you kept in existence 2 living creatures that you created, the one you called Behemoth, and the name of the other Leviathan. And you separated one from the other, for the 7th part where the water had been gathered together could not hold them both. And you gave Behemoth one of the parts that had been dried up on the 3rd day, to live in it, where there are 1,000 mountains, but to Leviathan you gave the 7th part, the watery part, and you have kept them to be eaten by whom you wish, and when you wish. On the 6th day you commanded the earth to bring forth before you cattle, wild animals, and creeping things, and over these you placed Adam, as ruler over all the works that you had made. And from him we have all come, the people whom you have chosen. Why do God's people suffer? All this I have spoken before you, O Lord, because you have said that it was for us that you created this world. As for the other nations that have descended from Adam, you have said that they are nothing, and that they are like spittle, and you have compared their abundance to a drop from a bucket. And now, O Lord, these nations, which are reputed to be as nothing, domineer over us and devour us. But we, your people, whom you have called your firstborn, only begotten, zealous for you, and most dear, have been given into their hands. If the world has indeed been created for us, why do we not possess our world as an inheritance? How long will this be so? Addendum on wisdom. I will answer that question for Ezra. It be as long as one's shadow is dark and their back is to the light. It will last as long as those in darkness hate the light and the light withdraws from them, that they might be destroyed in it according to their ways. There is your answer. Now go your way until it is your time. That dialogue, minus my answer to the last question, was taken from the apocryphal book 2nd Ezra. The following is from a series of my writings on what the world is as it is, and why it cannot remain as such. The obliteration of the kingdoms of lies. I am on occasion asked, why is the world as it is? Here, wherein is the reason found in the deceptive mirage and prison of wealth, power, influence, fame, and control in your world explained in a single paragraph? Isn't it amazing that many of today's leaders of governments rule like immortal gods but are protected like vulnerable little children? That is not new. It has been most, but not all of your history. It is also not sequestered to leaders of governments. Along with them, the ruling elite throughout all of history have had to be protected by entire armies and live in gated communities separated from the masses over which they ruled. That sounds a lot like a prison existence, doesn't it? Now, what does that tell you about wealth, power, influence, fame, and control in this world? Who do they have to be protected from? Well, first off, their own people whom they fear the most, and then secondarily their enemies whom they fear also. They have to protect and project one image to everyone on the surface, yet the reality behind the facade and inside them is quite a different reality. Is that not shallowness of life? What do you call those who live in daily fear, insecurity, and are bound to external appearances and expectations which they have to constantly maintain and attempt to appease? Prisoners and slaves. Now, is this not true? Let us continue with the dialogues. These same elites construct elaborate systems of government and security, not so much for those they rule, but to protect themselves from those they rule over. Now think about that. Think about why your world is as it is. The more you have, the more you have to protect. The more you have fame and influence, the more of a target you are by the expectations of others. The more power you have, the more others lust for it and desire to take it from you. The more wealth and possessions you have, the more others covet it and seek to find ways to take it from you. The more you fear those taking it away from you, the more control you desire to protect yourselves from them. The control you gain, the more you create the conditions for enemies to rise up and take that control away from you, which drives you to become more paranoid and control even more, fueling the very conditions you fear most. See where this ends. The more one has of any of these things, the more they desire more of them, including control, to protect them from those who lust for it and would do anything to take it from them. The more you take for yourselves, the less there is for everyone else, undermining the very ground you stand upon in the heights of the land over the people. The less they have, the more they see you as the reason for it and hate you. In this way, you fuel your own demise by your own thinking, decisions, and actions in ever-growing fear, confusion, and stress, which turns you into the very beast you feared in the first place. Broad is that path to destruction. Now consider why I call the false promises of this world a lie. Everything has a cost here now, doesn't it? As for people, so too for nations. When you dry up the ground beneath your feet financially and crush and plunder those simply who are trying to make a living and provide for their families, you destabilize everything, you who have the most wealth, power, influence, fame, and control gained, and put all of it at risk in your indifference, blind ambition, greed, fear, confusion, and avarice and hubris. Instead of building a better society, you devour and destroy the one you have until it eventually devours and destroys you. Is this not exactly your global predicament right now? That is not new. It is the totality of your history. There be nothing new under the sun, but the timing of the consequences for it, as you can see here in the post. When you build a world, theat always promises more, and you jettison truth, love, justice, mercy, humility, contentment, and restraint. You create a beast from the black hole of your emptiness, which devours and destroys both you and the entire world. It is a world which is ruled by more and delivers ever less on the promises. It is a chasing after your shadow. It is a world of darkness in it. It is a chasing after the wind. It is a sowing of the wind, which will bring the reaping of it in a whirlwind of consequences. This is your predicament. This is your prison. This is your world. It is how it functions and how and why it will end. The nature of addiction is based in the lie that you always need more. Is this not your entire world? Is it not what has driven all that causes human suffering and destruction of your kingdoms, nations, empires, and people? It is but an empty shadow of the eternal real. Thus why we call it the valley of the shadows of death. There will never be enough temporal people, places and things to fill the infinite space that only the eternal Spirit of God can fill. Attempting to do otherwise is the singular reason why your global world history is the wreckage it has always been. Now you know why this world is temporal. You also now know why it will end. It was never made for eternity. Neither are your mortal coils. As for people, so too for the nations. This is your world. You don't know because you don't seek. You don't seek because you don't want to know. You don't know because you don't ask. You don't ask because you don't think you can, don't want to, or don't believe that you will receive. You don't see because you don't realize you are without sight. You don't have sight to see because you are in darkness. You are in darkness because you believe lies. You believe lies because you don't seek, nor see, nor ask for the truth. Why is this? Because you are in fear of what you see, hear, and come to know. Fear is false evidence appearing real. You are in fear because you are deceived and enslaved by lies. The lies cannot exist without deceiving you and keeping you from the truth. For the lies cannot tolerate asking for truth, nor questioning whether or not it is true. Thus the lie keeps in the darkness, bound to itself, using you against your own best interests, to keep you from being free from its tyranny, in fear and confusion, having been deceived by it. Hence you do not ask, do not seek, do not see, and do not know. Yet you lie to yourselves and others, calling lies truth, and truth lies, even waging war against the truth, being a proxy. For the very lie that is enslaving and destroying you, keeping you from the very truth, you are being used to fight against. By fighting against the truth, you expose yourselves and prove it true, while yourselves in a lie. Thus both you and your darkness and the lies are exposed in and by the light of the truth. So you deny it and attempt to discredit, fight it and silence it even more in pride, which only further quickens your exposure by the light of the truth. So you attempt to ignore and pretend it does not exist, worsening your condition and hastening the consequences there wherein. And many of you wonder why your world is as it is? You do know why. I have told you. The question is, how long will you deny this and continue to remain in the darkness, which characterizes your world even to your own destruction? As for people, so too for the nation and nations. You may deny the existence of the living Word of God, but your own logic falls apart attempting to refute it and war against it. So too does all you make and rely on a part in doing so, including your lives, societies, and nations. For you corrupt all things, being in a lie, denying the very thing which upholds and sustains your world and all that is in it. Then you blame God. You blame the light of the truth, calling it a lie. You pretend you are without error and unquestionable. You think you are immune from the consequences of doing so. Yet you wonder why things are as they are. You do know. You are lying when tell yourselves and others anything different. Yet you demand truth from others? Yet when they tell you the truths, you do not wish you hear, you hate them and attack them. What does this say about you and what you are doing and being exposed in? It shows you that the darkness you are in cannot stand up to the truth, but in fact is dependent upon it, just as you are, even though your pride cannot admit it. Thus you destroy yourselves in that pride, serving the lies that are leading you straight to it. This is your world. There are no more excuses. Nor will you be allowed to continue to rule this world, nor the one to come. For those lies have a cost, and costs equate to loss. So it was, so it is, and so it will be. There is truth, you will deny as well, right up until your own destruction, lest you turn from your lies to the truth. There be nothing more illogical than to choose a lie over the truth, and then proclaim your lies as truth. This too is exposed. Still think everyone, including you who are reading or hearing this, don't need grace? It is amazing how many wish to undermine the fundamentals of Christianity, only to find they have exposed and undermined themselves, their intents, and the corrupted ways they have attempted to do. All this, and proven what they fight true in themselves in a lie. The darkness rises in each generation, attempting to rerun a repackaged war against the truth, only to be utterly exposed and defeated. This time is no different. This generation is no different with one exception. The lies will utterly obliterated for all time and space and history. Welcome to the holy fire, adversaries. It is all consuming of that which is not from it, and of it while exposing all things. Those who wish to cancel truth do so at their own peril, and embark upon an endeavor which cancels them out of the book of life by their own thinking, choices, decisions, and actions. I learned early on to question things and seek the truth about them wherever it led me. That has been a great gift to me my whole life. I also learned to not follow the herd, instead, going against it without regard to the consequences, which oftentimes meant isolation and alienation. From a very young age, I had a strong sense of justice and mercy, which also has served me well. What I also learned is that here in America people use a lot of words and say little. They also use a lot of words and mislead many. You see, I have been a maverick my entire life, not without cause, however. America taught me much throughout my life. What it taught me the most was not to bend a knee to it while living the people in it. It taught me to not put my faith in people or governments, money or power, influence or popularity. Those have served me well also. America also showed me that it is a tale of two completely different nations, one that actually aspires to live up to what it purports, and the other one which purports it, but uses it to make merchandise out of everyone else. It would seem that not worshipping America has also granted me the vision to see not only what it is, but also what it should be and could be. It also showed me what most worship here is themselves and money. Many, if not most, really don't worship God. They make their own here and then pretend they aren't doing it. It would seem those are the ones who also bent a knee to America, corrupting it and themselves in the process. They are inherently unworthy to govern it, nor continue to plunder the people of it, to serve their bottomless pit of greed, pride, and idolatry of self and possessions. They do not truly love Americans or the nation. They only love what they can get out of them both, without regard to the consequences. Their time is coming to a close. So too is their control over everyone else. The world does not suffer from a lack of truth. It suffers from a denial of it and the corruption of it when they attempt to take what is true and use it for corrupted reasons and in corrupted ways in their own wisdom, and works apart from the Spirit of truth, which is the light of the living Word of God. Hence they are darkened by the spirit of the age in their minds, and enslaved to it in their minds, bodies and souls having been deceived by lies. There is a reason we tell you that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. The reason you peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations are in the state they are is because they have been and are being deceived by lies meant to divide, distort, enslave, devour, and destroy you by using you all against one another to protect the very darkness of the lie that is doing it to you. You are in a war. The truth sets the prisoners free and defeats the enemies of the truth. Are you tired of being manipulated by lies, fear, confusion, the expectations of others, the oppression thereof, and your addictions? Seek the truth in all things with all of your heart, and you will find it and find a freedom you never knew was possible in the light of the truth, as the darkness and the things in the darkness that held you fast in chains are exposed and defeated once and for all. There is a reason we who are free say to you that we are more than conquerors. We fight for you to be free in the light of the truth. We will not be defeated, for we have already won this war. Tell me this. Name one single thing that Satan created ex nihilo. Some will say evil. Evil was not created out of nothing. Satan created nothing. It only distorted, mixed up, confused, and corrupted what already was, is, and always has been. That being the truth. A distortion, mixing up, confusion, and corruption of truth is the genesis, or better said, the origin of lies. Do not lies bring about confusion and error? Indeed, it does. A lie is the misappropriation, misuse, mixing up and misapplication of truth to mislead and deceive in intent and outcomes. The truth is not dependent upon lies to exist. The lie is dependent upon truth to exist. This is clearly seen in how a shadow cannot exist without the light, which casts it down to the dust of the ground from an object. The darkness of the shadow is dependent upon the very light it flees from. For you will never see a shadow point towards the light, only away from the light. It is a lie when some tell you there is a balance of light and darkness. They are not in harmony. They are oppositional, and they are not equal. The darkness is dependent upon the light to exist, which means that the light exposes and extinguishes the darkness in the same way that the truth exposes the darkness of the shadow and all that is deceptive and confused in it. Where one finds evil, they will also find pride, fear, and confusion. For a lie rules by, in, and for those things. Those things are not in truth and love, justice and mercy, nor humility and contriteness of heart and soundness of mind. As we say in Christianity, the God of truth did not give you a spirit of fear nor confusion, but rather peace, love, power, and a sound mind. One cannot have a sound mind when they are in a lie and blind by fear and confusion. Likewise, being deceived by a lie steals your peace, corrupts and counterfeits love, drains your power and confused your thinking and perceptions. Hence why it is of and in the darkness. That darkness projects upon people what it is and what it is in using deception in lies to enslave. It comes to kill, steal, and destroy. Is this not what pride, fear, confusion, corruption, and lies manufactured in this world and in your own minds, bodies, and souls? Being that evil seeks to distort, deceive, enslave, dominate, plunder, devour, and destroy people, places, and things. It waged war against all humanity, seeking to keep humanity from the light of the truth which exposes it intents, schemes, and plans. That is an act of war. Is not war characterized by all of these things? It is said all war is deception. Indeed it is. All wars have their genesis in pride, fear, confusion, and lies. All of these bring division, destruction, suffering, and death, do they not? Have you not heard of the fog of war? War is the realm of uncertainty. A sensitive and discriminating judgment is called for, a skilled discernment to seek out the truth. It is the wise nation whose leaders seek the light of truth in all things humbly before heaven. It is the foolish ones who seek to take it and corrupt it while hiding the light of it only to thicken their own darkness and their blindness because of it. For all of heaven and all of earth testifies to these things. For the Tao of the humble is the way of the wise. The Tao of the prideful is the way of the fool. For those who think themselves wise in their own eyes are blind to their own reflections in the other, whom they think are but fools. Yet God chose to use the foolish things on this world to confound those who are wise in their own eyes. For in this way he puts them on display for the all to see the folly of the wisdom, and the wisdom in those whom they thought fools. It is in that spectacle the arrogant are exposed and humiliated, even as the humble are revealed. For wise is those who trust in the Lord God Almighty. Foolish are those who think them fools for doing so. All of human history testifies to this among all generations, to all peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations. All of creation tells this story for all times and space, that none may say they did not know, nor did they see what was clearly present with them, and among them, and all around them in all things. For the fool sees neither what is perceivable, nor what is beyond the surface appearances of those things. For they have chosen to see not nor hear not, though in their hearts they know they are but liars, pretending as their denial testifies against them also. Yet they be found without excuse and without covering to hide their guilt and shame. As for people, so too for the nation and all nations. Ruination of technocratic civilization. You are witnessing the ruination of civilization by many of the same ones who posit they are saving it. In the name of liberation, they are in fact enslaving themselves and everyone else to their very own fears and confusion. Their fear and confusion fuels their desire to control everything. The more they attempt to do so, the more they create the chaos that defies control. Thus, in proclaiming their own righteousness, wisdom and genius, they have become corrupted, foolish and imbecilic, which they are even now transmitting into every sphere of society and all the institutions and systems thereof. The inherent error of the simulacrum of technocratic society is seen in how technocrats begin to think more like their technologies, less like humanity, corrupting both. Thus they misappropriate, misapply and misuse knowledge, increasingly misleading themselves in the increasing unsoundness of own perceptions and thinking. In this way they create the very chaos and fragility which threatens to sweep them away in a maelstrom of their own making. As such, their systems begin to atrophy ever quicker, even as their ability to discern and mitigate it worsens. This your present world, and those who have co-opted it lacking wisdom and humility. The result is an insanity born of delusion, fear, disorder thinking and pride. Fear and confusion can have negative impacts on society, such as increasing stress, anxiety, distrust, and polarization. They can also hinder rational decision-making, problem-solving, and cooperation. To overcome fear and confusion, we need to seek reliable information, cultivate empathy, and embrace uncertainty. Thus, in their desire to create their own subjective utopias, they create the very hell that hoped to avoid. Amassing knowledge does not presume the wisdom in application of it any more than standing on a runway makes one a jet plane. However, it does increase the capacities of many towards their self-deception and eventual desolation. Unsound thinking leads to unsound societies. Both are at once corrupted and corrupting. One only has to look at what a nation's leaders promote to see what they value and incentivize. The actual value and virtue in it is seen in the outcomes and consequences. In other words, the fruit on the tree reveals the kind of seed the tree on which it hangs and its roots are in. Nothing is hidden. It all is exposed one way or another. The downward spiral of dissonance in times of crisis. Cognitive dissonance cannot properly discern the noise from the signal. Where confusion proliferates, one finds the signal to noise flaw nearly impossible to perceive, basing one's ability upon the externality alone. They cannot perceive what is hidden in plain sight, much less in real time. Discernment is more than just pattern recognition, any more than knowing facts is a knowing of the truth. Facts have a proper context like any other information. The proper context is in the integrated unity of the truth. One cannot properly find that context without the spirit of truth, which is the governance of the Most High from the inside out. Most people are extremely literal-minded in their perception and lack an ability to discern information past the immediate spoon-feeding of it to them. They are not geared towards investigating beyond the immediate presentation of information as to whether or not said information is true or not. Nor are they able to fit information into an accurate, logical, contextual, integrated framework beyond the fragments which they most often forget. This amounts to a serious vulnerability. Add to that fact that what people do apprehend informationally is subject to their pre-existent, often fractured experiences, incomplete and untested worldviews, and a constant flow of muddy waters, if you will, of information overwhelming them, adding to the cognitive dissonance and confusion. A high-level misunderstanding of complex systems, as well as a lack of general situational awareness, then mixes with the ever-present corrupted information flows and pre-existent faulty foundations upon which they base their perceptions, and faulty reasoning amplifying the noise, obscuring the actual signals present. Thus they are unable to make sense of what is occurring around them beyond a narrowband and shallow depth of perception. This problem is further complicated by extreme crisis and the resulting traumas which trample down and impair further their cognitive abilities. Long-duration fear leads to long-term confusion and entropic impacts upon cognitive abilities, slowing recover times when combined with the current environment of disinformation, misinformation, corrupted information, and outright lies. The fear to confusion ratios exponentially self-amplify one another as cycling occurs. This makes them vulnerable to more negative influences and self-destructive behaviors while further degrading stress, tolerance and abilities to stave off the trampling effects on their physiological and psychological well-being. Now all of these things have destructive effects alone, which degrade proper decision-making and behavioral outworkings. When the individual, group, or the society in general are being poisoned by the aggregated impacts of informational, ideological, spiritual, physiological, psychological, and sociological pathogenic impactors, one can clearly see why I use the term trampling down to explain it. The extreme polarities first, as a binary, then create multipolarities, which form multiple opposing vortices, each being fueled by the others. The mixing of things across all of these various domains into muddy waters, so to speak, create a crisis of perception, meaning, comprehension and rationality. These are detrimental to human flourishing, in and of themselves. When they aggregate at a nation-state societal level around the seven spheres, they collectively enter into a downward spiral which becomes, in a very real sense, like a gravity well, or better said, like that of a great whirlwind. The result of people, particularly those in decision-making positions in the society, generally attempt to gain more control and power, thinking that it will solve their existential complexities and suffering, when in fact, it will only exponentially increase them. Here wherein is the great paradox. For once one is lured into the chaos of any of the competing oppositional vortices, they are immediately captured by them and become further degraded in their ability to operate in any manner which does not fuel more of the forces which keep them swirling there within. Like the drowning man, who in a panic flails about attempting to reach the surface, yet in their fear, cannot see that they are actually doing the very things which is sucking them deeper under the waters. So too it is for the decision-makers, who likewise worsen their condition in the midst of the crisis. This is the paradox of the fight or flight fear response in both individuals and nations at large. For thinking they are doing what they must, they actually do what they should not, worsening their predicament and amplifying the complexity and severity of their conditions. This is an example of why it is that we say, there is a way which seems right unto people, but it is the broad way which leads to destruction. For in doing what they believe is right in their own eyes, being consumed by fear and confusion, they do not comprehend they are in fact blinding themselves to the remedy for their ever-worsening conditions. Yet the fear rules like a tyrant, and the confusion paralyzes them in the fear, while their emotions become increasingly chaotic as their minds are increasingly darkened. When pride is involved, which it most often is in leadership decision-making positions, the inherent amplitude of the impacts are exponentially greater than what already bad conditions would demand to be overcome. This is why we say where the leaders have no vision, being blinded by their pride and darkened by their fear and confusion, the people perish because of the weight of their decisions. For they, having greater immediate influence and impacts, trigger faster and more definitively the cascade effects which fuel the maelstrom of the whirlwind, afflicting the entire society. Thus they bear a greater proportion of the responsibility for it being in those positions in the here and now and forced after. Where there is great pride, there is also great corruption, fear, and a lack of proper wisdom to lead rightly. Now consider this in terms of governments and the leadership of them. This is why authentic servant leadership is a necessity, not simply an option. Our system does not value such, due to the pathogenic conditions of our society and the entropy within the systems thereof. Hence the entropy is also amplified and accelerated. This is another example of why we say that what is sown will be reaped. When the society at large, the systems which comprise it, and the leadership of it, mix with the will of the people, the conflict between the two make it more difficult for both to function. Hence they collectively fuel more entropic cascade effects with innumerable consequences to follow in ever greater complexity. This is what occurs when nations and empire fall. Hence why I always tell you, as it is for people so too for the nation and nations. The warning signs. All that occurs in the created order points to a greater reality occurring in human civilizations, exposing it and warning it. This is what it means when it was said that there would be signs in the sun, the moon and the stars in the heavens above and on earth in creation below. Nothing is disconnected. Nothing occurs in a vacuum here, no matter how big or small, and without regard to whether or not you see it, acknowledge it, or deny it. The problem with your times is that you think you are more evolved and intelligent and wise than you are, based solely upon external appearances of things, technologies, knowledge base, and your perceived wealth, power, influence, and control. You are in error. All of those things are corrupted by having misappropriated, misapplied and misused, creating fear and confusion, leading to divisions, suffering, conflict, chaos and destruction, while misleading you. Thus most do what is right in their own eyes, never realizing they are blind to the greater spiritual reality which they exist. Then they blame the God for the very things they choose to do, and one another continuing to self-justify their own evils. Because they love not the truth, they are turned over to reprobate minds and are sent a great delusion, which then leads them to destruction by their own wisdom and works. This is why we say they are in darkness with the world at large. Then they are caught unaware when destruction comes, preferring the counterfeits of actual peace and security in their denial and blindness. This is why they deny warnings and ignore those who warn them, seeing them as anathema to their delusional false realities. As for people, so too for the nation and nations. The national perils. A social contract in a nation leads the people at large to suffering, dissipation, desolation and destruction when it is based upon exchanging the truth for a lie. Thus they incentivize evils and corruption, which in their lies will bring about the whirlwind of consequences, having sown the wind of lies, false doctrines, deception and diversion. Hence the seeds of destruction are planted in the land, which mature once they germinate into weeds, thorns and thistles, bearing the fruit of iniquity which brings destruction. This is the tau of the fall of peoples, nations and empires. Being that they make a covenant with a lie, they also share in the consequences of it. Thus they become proxy soldiers and cognitive slaves, working against their own actual best interests and the survival of their own lives and the life of the nation at large. They attempt to ignore, deny and even silence, and destroy those who warn them and call them to change their predicament. In this way they assure the justness of their destruction and hasten it, even as their denial of it thickens, and their fear and confusion amplifies in them pride of their hearts and minds. They become inverted in their perceptions and futile in their thinking as the time of their reckoning speeds up to render to them what is justly due them by their own choices, decision-making and actions which they continue to call good, even as they know it is evil and self-destructive. In conclusion, the temptation for those in leadership is to further dumb down information and even obscure it, thinking that the people cannot handle it, when in fact by doing so they actually undermine their credibility with the people and give hostile forces an even greater foothold from which to exploit both themselves and the people. Again, traditional wisdom in such matters has been played out over and over again, always with the same failing result. Yet it is the ways of this world and its kingdoms, nations and empires. As I have stated in my last 2 posts, reality of things are revealed. I also explain why it is such greater wisdom in things are seen as foolish by those in positions of authority and decision-making as well, as by the people. When I tell these things, they are not without reason nor timing. Even so, most are captured by their diversions, vices, denials and self-justifying hostility, despite all of history and all of creation testifying to them as to folly of going that way. In doing so, they prove the truth about them true, while exposing their own foolishness in the outcomes of their own way. For such there be no remedy, but the consequences which might break their pride and force a moment of cogent thinking and sobriety in decision-making to humbly change their course before the course of history sweeps them away in the stormy whirlwinds of their making and amplifying. For there be nothing new under the sun regarding these matters. This is particularly the case where governance of nations are concerned. Hence why it is human history is a tale of fools and unlearned lessons, whereas the continuance of human suffering and destructive cycles do so punctuate the times. I do not offer these thoughts under the delusion that our times nor our leadership will learn from them humbly, though it still remains my hope despite the odds. That said, these things must be said, even as the warning must be given, even as the consequences are rendered. Let it be stated here that I have offered these things in good conscience, as a service to all for the good and proper instruction of all, that we might as a people avoid the fullness of our consequences by humbling ourselves before God, taking responsibility, each for our own contributions to the totality of the whole of our present woes. Likewise, I have attempted to clearly diagnose our predicament for the benefit of all who have ears to hear and eyes to see, that they might know before heaven and earth the reasons things are as they are, and why what must come must in fact come. I am by no means greater than any here, nor lesser than many might presume. I am merely speaking bluntly as to the reality in which we all find ourselves in the light of truth and the darkness of our times, which seeks to extinguish it with a flood of muddied waters meant to confuse and deceive. May it be that this nation and its people awake from their slumber, sober up and seek the light of truth that alone can guide us through the dark days. Why the world is as it is. A man came to me one day and asked me why the world is so screwed up. I handed him a mirror and asked him, "What do you see?" Angrily he said, "I don't see a damn thing." I said, "Yes, and there is your answer to why the world is the way it is. If you cannot see yourself as you are in the mirror, how then do you expect to see others as they are, or the world as it is, and make proper decisions in it with people?" With that the man stormed out, still blind to both himself and the world he was blind to. His pride and denial kept him in the darkness which had stolen his vision from him. This is precisely why your world is as it is. If you cannot see what is in front of you, how do you expect to see beyond it and comprehend anything as it is? The world has a worldview problem. That problem blinds many to the bigger reality of what they actually live in and why things occur. Nowhere is this more obvious than in relations between peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations. There is a reason your world does not change. It is because it chooses to remain in the darkness with its lies and its hatreds to justify its evils, which it loves more than the truth or its children. For it is by that you turn your blessings into curses and your gardens and cities into graves. For this has been your own way since the first lie, the first theft, and the first murder. This is human history, as it is despite every opportunity afforded to you by God to turn from it. So he has turned you over to it. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth will never change the world. Until all learn this, this is your fate. You will destroy one another until you learn to value your own reflection in one another, instead of pointing at yourselves in the reflections of one another in hatred and bitterness. You will destroy one another in your lies until you love the truth more than you hate your enemies. Then you see that your enemy was always yourselves all along, which you despised in your reflections in others. How can I say such a thing? Read a history book. Look around you. Look at your own lives. Look in the mirror. What do you see? Show a righteous nation, and I'll show you a well-crafted deception. Show me a righteous individual in their own flesh, wisdom and works, and I'll hand him a mirror. As for people, so too for the nations. The law is a reflection. For the law, being only a reflection of the blessings to come and not their substance, can never make perfect those who come near by the same sacrifices repeatedly offered year after year. Otherwise, would they not have stopped offering them, because the worshippers, cleansed once for all, would no longer be aware of any sins? Instead, through those sacrifices, there is a reminder of sins year after year, for it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Book of Hebrews. Therefore lay aside all filthiness and overflow of wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. But be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror, for he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does. If anyone among you thinks he is religious, and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is useless. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. James 1:21-27. The most devastating thing the Most High could do to all the nations is turn you over to your evils and hatreds. For if he did, you would surely destroy one another and all of creation completely. Why do I say such a thing? The totality of human history. Some should consider these things. You are not evolved. The only thing that has evolved is the multiplicity of your ways of destroying one another and the world at large. Do not be deceived by your knowledge base and technologies. Neither be deceived by your own sins, pride, lies, machinations, intrigues, fears and confusion. For all of these things are but dust in the wind, which lead to the whirlwinds of your destruction in violence, hatred, bitterness, and wars. All things in heaven and on earth testify to this. All things in the heavens, the sun, the moon and stars above, and on earth below in creation as well as Sheol itself below it. For civilizations have come and gone. Peoples, tribes, tongues, nations, kingdoms and empires have risen from the dust of the ground and fallen back to it into their own shadows to vanish from memory. Every single one of them thought themselves greater, more advanced and permanent than the ones which came before. In their pride and arrogance, they corrupted themselves even as they conspired against one another to destroy one another. They too chased their shadows even into the dust of the ground. For there be only the light of the truth in love which preserves and restores. Likewise it's so also with justice, with mercy from humble and contrite hearts, which altogether bring what can only be done in and by the Spirit of God most high in his grace, wisdom and saving knowledge. For this is not mystery, it is reality. Now consider why I tell you this at this time. Consider your personal and collective history. Consider that the narrow way is the way which leads to life, and it is the broad path which leads to suffering and destruction. That broad path is wide as the mouth of the grave, and as deep as a bottomless pit. For this is why your world is as it is. Words of wisdom from a fool. Those who wish to rerun the past will eventually sacrifice their future on the altar of the present. Those who wish to change the appointed times and seasons will in fact create the very time they fear most in the foolishness of their own ways. As for people, so too for nations. Humility is better than overconfidence and pride. Confidence is better than self-doubt. Now this, all struggle with self-doubt at times. One cannot be confident in the absence of it. You have confidence despite it. Likewise, you cannot have courage in the absence of fear. You have courage despite it. Faith in God is greater than all things in this world. Those who love the truth know God. Those who hate truth think they are God, or believe in a false one. Those who seek the truth in all things also are the ones who test all things. Those who love God worship him in spirit with all their heart, mind and strength. Those who forgive others are those who know they have been and can be forgiven. Those who have been forgiven much love much. Those who love much know they have been forgiven much and thereby do likewise to others. Those give grace freely to others know to their own need of it themselves, and how God freely gives them grace daily. Those who are merciful to others are also those who discern rightly and know justice. Those who love justice also love truth and mercy, having learned to love others as themselves, even as they know that God loves them, yet is both perfectly just and merciful. Those who hate injustice also must hate justice without mercy. Those who hate mercy hate genuine justice. For it is the truth in love which brings about authentic justice and mercy from humble and contrite hearts. For all of these things are one. Those who have a heart for the broken, downtrodden, and the mistreated are also those who are often the most acquainted with it. Those who have been raised up by others are often those who raise up others who need the same helping hand they once needed. It's far better to seek the wisdom of God than to pursue the riches of this world in the wisdom of man and the works thereof. It is better to seek the truth of God than to pursue one's own lies, calling it truth. For the former will lead to life eternal, and the latter to one's end. For one frees and the other enslaves. The way of truth is also the light of truth. The light of the truth is also the Spirit of truth. These are one with the Father of lights and Son of righteousness, in both spirit and in heart. As for people, so too for the nations. Pride is a toxin to understanding. Its antidote is humility. Futility is revealed in the way of the prideful and foolishness in their own wisdom apart from God. This is clearly seen in every generation and in our present days. You know how I know that God answers prayer? Long ago I asked him to grant me wisdom. He answered that prayer by showing me how foolish I am and can be. Then he revealed to me how foolish others are and can be. Then he revealed to me how foolish this world is. So I became a fool in the eyes of this world, and gained great wisdom by learning from both my own foolishness and that of the world. The greatest wisdom one can learn is this: the fear of the Lord is the beginning of it, but it is not its end. Its end is reverence, faith, peace, love, hope, power, and a sound mind in all truth. There, wherein is saving knowledge, where authentic understanding begins to be forged. For the wisdom of God cannot be granted to one who refuses to see how their own wisdom is but foolishness and folly. Thus one cannot grow in the wisdom of God, but by seeing the very fool one already is, and by becoming the very fool the world will think you are in its own foolishness and pride. For the world thinks its wisdom to be supreme over all things, even as all things testify against it in the outcomes of it, as seen clearly throughout all of human history. So if I be a fool by this world's standards, I count it as wisdom in the one which is even now replacing it. One where God's wisdom reigns supreme on earth as it is in heaven. And should I boast? I'm telling you a secret. God's wisdom always has reigned supreme here too, despite what the ways of the world might think in its own wisdom, which is but foolishness before him. So may his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So do you now understand why at the end of each letter to the 7 churches in the book of Revelation it was written, "Let he who has an ear hear what Spirit of truth says. What spirit is speaking to you in this I have written to you? And from whom, and from whence does it come from? Wisdom of mortal man versus the wisdom of God. What is the difference between the wisdom of corruptible mortal man and the wisdom of God? Take a look around you. The wisdom of corruptible mortal man is on grand display, and has been for all of human history in obvious ways that can be seen with mortal eyes and perceived by mortal carnal minds. It has been a history of much chaos, suffering, and destruction. It has been proven to be insufficient to transform the world into the likeness of heaven, while being successful in glimpses of hell. Now what about that of God's wisdom? How does one perceive it? Well, to put it simply, reread the above failures of the wisdom of corruptible mortal man and the works thereof, and consider that it testifies, even in its failures and insufficiencies, the truth of the wisdom of God and his eternal word. For even the darkness testifies despite itself to the light of the truth from which it flees, as it denies what the wisdom of God, proving the eternal wisdom of God in the folly of the wisdom of mortal carnal. Wisdom in this world. Everything testifies to the truth. All things reveal it, even that which wars against it, exposing its lack of it. Thus as King David wrote, "Where shall I go from your spirit, or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you." Psalm 139, 7-12. For nothing is hidden from the light of the truth of God, even as all things reveal this, as it testifies to this, even when it attempts to not do so. He makes a spectacle out of the wisdom of this world, and those who rely upon it apart from him. For God opposes the arrogant, exposes the corrupt, and raises up the humble and contrite in heart. Let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks that he is wise in this age, let him become a fool that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is folly with God. For it is written, "He catches the wise in their craftiness." And again, "The Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile." Corinthians 3. Now consider these things in our times. As for people, so too for nations. The wise of this world are revealed to be fools if they are not wise in the knowledge and trust in the Lord. For professing to be wise, they became fools, proving what was said about them by God, that they loved not the truth, and so were given over to a corrupted mind, and sent a great delusion that their way might lead them to their own destruction. For they thought the ways of God foolish, even as they denied his wisdom and saving knowledge which would have prevented their destruction. Even so many there are who pursue that broad way, even to their own peril in their pride and arrogance. But, as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love him. These things God has revealed to us through the Spirit. For the Spirit searches everything, even the depths of God. For who knows a person's thoughts except the spirit of that person, which is in him? So also no one comprehends the thoughts of God, except the Spirit of God. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, that we might understand the things freely given us by God. And we impart this in words not taught by human wisdom, but taught by the Spirit, interpreting spiritual truths to those who are spiritual. The carnal person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him, and he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. The spiritual person judges all things, but is himself to be judged by no one. For who has understood the mind of the Lord so as to instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. 1 Corinthians 2:9-16. As for people, so too for nations. The two wisdoms. True wisdom is ageless. However, the way of the fool is short and soon forgotten. The truly wise are also the truly humble. Not so with the tao of the fool and the prideful, for they are most often one in the same. Those who say that there is no such thing as objective truth are proving it by their lack of it. Those who say that truth is only subjective to the perceiver who perceives it as such are blind to it, proving they are subject to the consequences of it, which they can neither perceive nor acknowledge until it is rendered upon them. Then they perceive it. Still many refuse to acknowledge it, proving they are neither teachable nor humble, remaining slaves to their pride. Those who call truth lies and lies truth are without eyes to see nor ears to hear, being in the darkness of their mind and heart, which has rendered them both deaf and blind in spirit. They are as those who profess to be wise, while proving themselves fools in both words, actions and outcomes. The Tao of the wise man is seen in how they realize how foolish they can be and have been, taking responsibility for it while remaining willing to learn from it. For intellect alone without heart is as a lamp without light and a heart without life. Those who desire truth must start that journey into it by seeing all that they are in which is not. For it is the light of the truth which reveals what was previously hidden in the darkness, freeing them from the chains found there wherein. For it is only the truth in love that brings about justice and mercy from humble and contrite hearts. If any of these be lacking or absent, then they are all lacking and incomplete, for they are one. Thus why the wise realize how little they actually know and comprehend, always seeking to learn in all things and all circumstances, even as they grow in knowledge and understanding of the truth. For the measure of a man is not in what they think they know, but in understanding how little they know while humbly remaining teachable. So too it is that the measure of a man is not in their abundance of possessions and success, but rather in their abundance of character with or without them. In this way, they know that the greater wealth and success is that which is not to be found in all that they leave behind when they depart from this world, but rather the impacts they have had for good or evil on that world and all that is in it. It is better to store up the treasures of divine truth and love than that of gold and silver, for the former transcends this world, even as the latter are rendered worthless to them when they do. As for people, so too for the nations. Those who refuse correction in error also refuse truth, which frees them from the chains of lies. Those who refuse truth have by default accepted that which is revealing their pride and their ignorance in it. Those who seek to destroy others who bless them destroy themselves in the process of turning those blessings into curses. Those who cannot learn from their own mistakes are also those who cannot learn from the mistakes of others, while pointing themselves out in those whom they refuse to learn from. Those who seek temporal riches rather than eternal truth and wisdom will forfeit all they gain in the temporal and in eternity. Those who despise truth are also those who take it and corrupt it in their avarice and hubris, proving the truth true and themselves a liar. Those who love their lies also hates all that exposes it, for they are in darkness and attempt to extinguish the light, fearing that it will expose them. Thus they expose themselves in it and in the light of the truth. Those who cannot forgive others are also those who cannot forgive themselves, nor ask for forgiveness when they have done evil. Thus they remain slaves to that evil and a proxy for it, locking themselves in their unforgiveness and refusing it when others forgive them. Thus they worsen their condition and hasten their own destruction in their own way in their pride, fear, confusion, evils, and unforgiveness. Here it becomes obvious they have not, refuse not, and cannot learn from what is, what was, and what could be. As for peoples, so too for the nations. The beast of unbridled greed and lawlessness are found in the sons and daughters whose nature it is seen, and in whose actions it is revealed, even unto their destruction. For it is in this they prove the justness of their destruction, and their delivery to their father, the father of lies, and their mother, the mother of chaos, with whom their affections have been chained to even as death and the grave. The seeds of the dragon of chaos are sown in the field of the world in every people, tribe, tongue, and nation. It is why none of them are without corruption and the evils which it gives birth to. If you wish to understand why your world is the way it is, you just be willing see these seeds in you and around you. For those seeds are planted in the minds and bodies working in and through the mortal coils of all. For the mortal coils are far too weak and insufficient in their substance and their vulnerabilities to change their fate and the souls which serve them and rely upon them alone. For in doing so, one follows their own shadow into the eternal darkness, after living their mortal lives pursuing it, and loving their evil deeds done in the darkness of it there wherein. For these are those who love not the light of the truth, nor the righteousness it reveals, even as it frees you from the chains of that which is not. As for people, so too for the nations. What one values reveals much. What a society and a culture values reveals much, for it exposes both its strengths and weaknesses. To all, these things are things exploited by your adversaries and near-peer competitors. Knowledge without wisdom does not make a wiser path. It makes a more perilous and destructive one. This is why it is so many are proclaiming the end of American hegemony. It is also why it is that the narrative of American exceptionalism is mocked and seen as empty by your adversaries and those whom they are influencing to turn against you among the nations. As for people, so too for the nation and nations. If you wish to change this paradigm, then you must become something more than a facade and offer the world something greater and more inspiring and authentic than the shallowness of your policies and entropy-ridden culture. This is precisely what you have lost and are even now failing to regain in your national fear, confusion, divisions, and quite honestly corruption and foolishness. It must be said bluntly here that no nation has ever recovered from their woes retaining their pride and corruption. This is why I so often speak about the national predicament and your lack of vision in leadership and for the nation at large. When I talk about America next, it is not simply a clever branding for what can be that can be cherry-picked and used by those in power who wish to use it for their own corrupt intents. For this is precisely what led us all here to this juncture. Rerunning that playbook will only worsen this nation's condition, further amplify its entropy, and hasten its descent towards even greater complexity and dissipation. I know many are foolish enough to attempt to do it, regardless of that warning. However, all of history testifies to what I am telling you, and its patterns reveal the folly of those who in the twilight of their nation's woes did exactly that, only to create the very conditions which cost them their futures. So I tell you that because I know how things work here, and what people do most of the time before they do it in such situations as we are in as a nation. It is why I warn you against it, for the consequences of doing so will be swiftly rendered by it, and due to the convergence of maladies this nation is suffering already. But I expect some will try it anyway. History also reveals that. So you have been forewarned as to these things for that reason. Nothing is hidden, nor is it dependent upon technologies, nor cunning machinations. It is all in and under the light of truth, even if many, and in fact most, do not see it or comprehend it. You see the way of kingdoms, nations and empires all rise and fall for the same reasons. Chiefly among them is pride with fear, confusion and corruption coming bundled with it. This is what your adversaries are counting on. The question is, are you going to prove them right? Or are you going to break the pattern in history, having learned its lessons in the opportunity granted to you at this time? It is this question all face individually, and the nation faces collectively. There can be no way to overcome such circumstances, but in the truth, love, justice and mercy from the inside out from humble and contrite hearts. All other things are merely diversion and self-deception. This applies to all things here in this world for all peoples, tribes, tongues and nations. As I have said before, we would not have arrived here, at this juncture in our national history, if these things were known and put into practice. Likewise, we will not move past our predicament remaining in the lack of them, no matter how clever and cunning people might think they are. For there wherein is the paradox of human nature and the nature of nation-states. It is this historical pattern which I clearly have stated which proves it. There will be a cost either way. One is a good investment, and other a foolish one, which will lead to further desolation and destruction. A wise warrior, a foolish king. A fool desires war. A greater fool desires a false peace. For they will only get a greater war and a more certain defeat. A wise man avoids war by exhausting all means, which could avoid it short of accepting a false peace. A wiser man remains ready for war, while doing the same and praying for a just resolution short of war, even as they remain prepared to have to fight one. There be nothing good about a war besides the end of one. There be nothing good about a false peace nor the greater war which it is sure to bring. A wise leader is humble and gracious in both defeat and victory, knowing the costs of both, and their responsibility for them both. A fool is prideful and arrogant in both victory and defeat, having learned nothing from either nor taken responsibility for it. Pride is the worst reason to remain in a war, and the first reason one loses them. For it is in this one is shown to be incompetent to lead and too stubborn to learn to be a teachable student and a humble servant to wise leaders before becoming foolish one in a position of leadership. No one wise should desire to be a leader. They should desire to learn from their mistakes and successes and be willing to offer those lessons to others who must lead. For the lust for wealth, power and influence corrupts even the wise, making fools and prideful leaders of themselves. Those who do wish to lead must first learn to be a humble, honest and teachable servant to those who do. For it is in that willingness one will grow in faith in God, in all truth and love and justice and mercy and wisdom and understanding. It will first expose your insufficiencies, weakness, break you in them, and then grow and restore you as you must be and will become. For it is seeing the fool that you are shown your need for the wisdom that you must have to lead as you ought. There is no lasting glory in war nor in leadership, but that which transcends your mortal coils and humbled you in the process that you might be glorified in humility and faithfulness in God. Be quick to give glory to God and credit to others in your successes, lest you become arrogant and corrupt yourselves and find that your success is empty and your glory is merely pride. For there is a reason we say that pride comes before a fall, and in such a fall there is humiliation and loss. These things are precisely the opposite of how your world and its nations function most of the time, is it not? Yet you wonder why it is the way it is. Stop deceiving yourselves. You know exactly why it is as it is. For in denying it, you are also contributing to it in greater measure. As for people, so too for nations. I am but a worthless fool without God, and would only offer more foolishness to a world with a surplus of it. He gives freely to those who ask him earnestly. You are no different than me. I am not different than you. I offer it freely to you as it was given to me in hopes that it might take root in your heart and mind, that you might be a wiser man than I am or will be, and always give the glory to God, from whom all good things do flow freely to those who are of the right heart. If I be a fool, it is my hope that I am at least a fool for the things of God Almighty, one who seeks to become humble and wiser tomorrow than I was today, and grow in truth and love that I might somehow be the right kind of fool in a world whose wisdom is but foolishness to God. I thank him and praise his name that he is gracious and freely gives understanding to fools such as I, that I might offer it freely to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, and a heart and mind to comprehend in him. For I am nothing apart from him, yet in him all things are freely given to me according to his will, plan and timing. All glory to God Most High, for he is as kind and forgiving as he is steadfast in his love and provisions to me. For this I am both humbled yet boast in his works. He is holy. What am I that he cares for me and protects and instructs me as to the way to go, even as he raises me as his own? He is my strength, my shield and my fortress. In him there is no fear nor confusion, only peace, love, power, and a sound mind. He conceals nothing from those who seek him in their ways. Hear this, O Israel. The Lord our God is one. There is no division nor darkness in him. Praise his holy name from your hearts. He does not forsake his own nor leave them as orphans. As for people, so too for the nations. Othniel Max Daves. As for people, so too for the nations. The fool, otherwise known as Othniel Max Daves.